Value is reflected. It is mirrored back to you in the way people treat you, the space they give you, the effort they make for you. And the reflection starts with you. If you see yourself as valuable, you don't beg to be chosen. You don't lower your standards to be included. You don't tolerate behavior that strips you of your dignity. When you hold yourself with quiet confidence, others reflect that back. When you stop trying to convince, others start to notice what they risk losing. Chasing approval, on the other hand, sets off a danger cycle. The more you chase, the less they respect you. The less they respect you, the more you chase. Soon, you are not in a relationship of equals. You are trapped in a performance where your entire worth depends on someone else's inconsistent recognition. That is not love, that is not respect, and that is not value. That is dependence disguised as effort. The true tragedy is that people who fall into this trap often give away their strongest currency, their energy, their self-respect, their presence, only to receive scraps in return. The way out begins with realizing that you cannot demand value. You cannot argue your way into being seen. You cannot force someone to appreciate you, because appreciation that comes from force is never real. It is compliance at best. Instead, you withdraw from the chase. You stop explaining. You stop proving. You let your actions, your boundaries, and your silence do the talking. This is not about manipulation, it is about alignment. When you choose to see yourself as valuable without external validation, the reflection you receive from others naturally changes. Some people will step up, others will step out. Both outcomes protect your dignity. The irony is that when you stop demanding value, when you stop chasing, that is often when people finally notice your worth. Because absence has a way of amplifying what presence took for granted. Your silence makes them hear. Your distance makes them see. Your refusal to beg makes them reconsider what they thought was guaranteed. And whether they rise to meet you or fall away, you no longer lose, because your value was never in their hands to begin with. It was always in yours, waiting to be reflected back. The power of absence is one of the most overlooked dynamics in human connection, yet it holds more influence than most realize. In relationships, whether personal or professional, the instinct when things begin to feel uncertain is to fill the silence with effort, with explanations, with attempts to bridge the gap. People often believe that the more they show up, the more they prove, the more they demonstrate their commitment, the more they will be valued. But there is a paradox at work. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is not in doing more, but in stepping back. Absence creates contrast, and contrast is what makes value visible. Imagine listening to music without pauses. If there were no silence between notes, the melody would lose its meaning, and the beauty would be drowned in noise. The pauses give shape to the sound. The same is true in relationships. Constant presence, constant availability, and constant effort often blur into the background until they are no longer noticed. But when you step back, when you stop filling every space with your energy, the absence itself highlights the weight of what you once brought. People rarely appreciate what is always there. A light that never goes out becomes invisible during the day. Water running endlessly in a stream is taken for granted until it dries. Absence awakens awareness because it forces people to face the void that effort once covered. This is why stepping back can often communicate more than endless explanations. Words can be ignored, but silence is difficult to escape. Effort can be dismissed, but the emptiness left by absence cannot be denied. There is also an unspoken dignity in choosing absence. It is not about manipulation, it is about reclaiming balance. When you constantly try to prove your worth, you unconsciously tell others that your value is negotiable, that you need their recognition to validate you. But when you step back, you communicate something different. You say that your presence is a choice, not a guarantee. You remind them that you do not exist to be consumed without consideration. This quiet act of restraint often carries more power than confrontation ever could. Absence also creates space, and space allows truth to surface. When you are always present, always filling the silence, the other person never has to face their own responsibility or feelings. They can hide behind your effort. But when you withdraw, they are forced to sit with themselves. They notice what is missing. They notice the effort they did not make. They notice the ease with which they once received your presence and the discomfort that arises without it. In that space, real reflection happens. In that space, clarity emerges, not only for them, but also for you. Because absence does not only affect others, it transforms you as well. It gives you the distance to observe without the fog of desperation. You begin to see patterns that constant involvement blinded you from. You realize whether someone values your presence or only your effort. You understand whether their silence is indifference or simply a lack of awareness. This clarity empowers you to make choices rooted in dignity rather than fear. The power of absence lies in its ability to reset dynamics without a single word. Where explanations fail, absence reveals. Where effort exhausts, absence restores. Where constant presence dulls meaning, absence sharpens it. By stepping back, you allow both yourself and others to see the truth without distraction. And often that truth speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Energy is currency, and every day you spend it whether you realize it or not. The conversations you engage in, the people you surround yourself with, the thoughts you entertain, all of these are transactions. Unlike money, which can be earned back with time and effort, energy is finite in every single day. Once spent, it does not return. This is why what you choose to invest your attention in determines not just the quality of your relationships, but the quality of your life. When you give energy to something, you are feeding it. Attention is nourishment. Give attention to growth, and growth accelerates. Give attention to conflict, and conflict intensifies. Give attention to someone who values and respects you, and the bond deepens. Give attention to someone who dismisses you, and all you do is inflate the imbalance. The law is simple: what you water grows, what you starve withers. The mistake many people make is not in having little energy, but in pouring it into places where there is no return. Think of energy like money in a bank. If you were to invest all your savings into a business that never generates profit, you would quickly realize the foolishness of the decision. Yet emotionally, people repeat this mistake daily. They invest time, effort, love, and attention into those who cannot or will not reciprocate. They keep spending, hoping the return will eventually come, but all that happens is exhaustion and disappointment. The account runs dry not because they had no energy, but because they failed to recognize where it should and should not be invested. Every relationship reflects this principle. In a healthy dynamic, the flow of energy is mutual. You give and you receive. You listen and you are heard. You support and you are supported. This balance creates sustainability, just like a profitable investment. But in toxic dynamics, energy flows only one way. You give, and in return you receive neglect, silence, or indifference. The longer you continue this pattern, the more depleted you become, while the other person grows comfortable in the imbalance. It is not cruelty that traps most people in such situations. It is the refusal to recognize energy as currency and to protect it accordingly. The power lies in redirecting your attention. When you notice that what you give is not being honored, you do not have to argue or demand recognition. You simply stop funding the imbalance. You stop feeding what does not grow. You reclaim your energy and invest it where it will bear fruit, into your own growth, into people who value your presence, into pursuits that bring meaning and fulfillment. The moment you stop giving attention to what withers you, it begins to lose its hold. This is not about selfishness, it is about sustainability. Just as a business cannot thrive by throwing resources into failing ventures, a person cannot thrive by endlessly pouring themselves into places of neglect. Protecting your energy is not arrogance, it is wisdom. It is recognizing that your attention is powerful, and where you place it creates the reality you live in. Energy is currency, and it shapes every outcome. Where you spend it determines what survives and what fades. When you invest it wisely, into growth, into respect, into love that flows both ways, you build wealth in the currency of life itself. When you waste it, you bankrupt your spirit. The choice of where to spend it is always yours, and that choice quietly defines everything. Respect is non-negotiable, and yet many people unconsciously compromise on it in the hope of preserving connection. They excuse dismissive words, tolerate careless behavior, and justify neglect with explanations like, maybe they're stressed, or maybe I'm asking for too much. But what they fail to see is that every time they accept less than respect, they are teaching others how to treat them. People learn from repetition. If someone disrespects you once and you let it pass, they receive the silent message that it is acceptable. If they do it again and you still stay, the message becomes stronger. Soon, disrespect becomes the new standard, and it no longer feels like an exception. It feels like the rule. Respect is the foundation of all healthy relationships, and without it, nothing else matters. Love without respect quickly becomes control. Attention without respect becomes manipulation. Care without respect feels hollow, because at the core of every bond, respect is what sustains dignity. When you compromise on it, you compromise on yourself. The tragedy is not only that others mistreat you, but that you begin to internalize the mistreatment as what you deserve. Over time, self-respect erodes because you have traded your boundaries for the illusion of connection. The moment you tolerate less than respect, you set a precedent. It is like allowing someone to walk into your house with muddy shoes. The first time, it might seem small, not worth creating conflict. But if you never set a boundary, soon the entire floor is dirty, and cleaning it becomes an endless task. Disrespect works the same way. It may begin with a dismissive comment, a broken promise, or a moment of indifference. But without correction, it expands until the relationship is filled with behaviors that strip you of your worth. By then, demanding respect feels harder because you have trained the other person to see you as someone who accepts less. This is why respect must be non-negotiable from the start. It is not about arrogance or demanding perfection. It is about clarity. It is about showing others through your boundaries and your actions that dignity is the minimum price of admission into your life. Respect does not mean agreement, and it does not mean constant praise. It means being valued as a human being spoken to with care, being regarded as worthy of consideration. When this is missing, everything else collapses, no matter how much affection or passion may appear to be present. Respect also extends to the way you treat yourself. If you constantly give second chances where none are deserved, if you silence your voice to avoid conflict, if you shrink yourself to keep peace, you are disrespecting your own worth. And when you disrespect yourself, others simply follow your example. Self-respect is the blueprint. The stronger it is, the clearer others understand how to engage with you. The power of non-negotiable respect lies in the standards it creates. When you refuse to accept less, some people will fall away. They may call you difficult, they may accuse you of being too demanding. But the truth is they were never willing to offer what is basic. Their departure is not a loss, it is protection. And those who remain, those who rise to meet your standard, those are the ones who truly deserve your presence. Every relationship is built on the lessons we allow. The moment you tolerate less than respect, you are teaching others that your dignity is optional. But when you make respect non-negotiable, you not only elevate the way others treat you, you elevate the way you see yourself. That choice defines the difference between being tolerated and being truly valued. Silence is a strategy, though many people mistake it for weakness. In moments of conflict or neglect, the urge is often to speak louder, explain more, or fight harder to be heard. Words pile on top of words, effort piles on top of effort, and yet the more noise you create, the less impact it seems to have. This is because when sound is constant, it fades into the background. Silence, on the other hand, interrupts. It creates a gap, a void, a contrast that demands to be noticed. Withdrawing noise is not surrender, it is intention. It is the conscious choice to stop pouring energy into explanations that fall on deaf ears. When someone has grown accustomed to your constant presence, your voice, your reassurance, your reminders, they stop hearing it. Familiarity dulls impact. But when you step back, when you choose silence instead of argument, absence instead of over-effort, the void left behind speaks louder than anything you could have said. Human psychology is wired to notice contrast. We only appreciate light because of darkness, warmth because of cold, sound because of quiet. The same rule applies in relationships. If someone is used to your constant giving, they stop registering its value. But the silence of your withdrawal highlights what they once overlooked. It forces them to feel the space you once filled. That space is not empty. It is filled with memory, with comparison, with the weight of what is no longer there. Silence is also a strategy because it removes fuel from unnecessary battles. Arguments often spiral because both sides feed the fire with words. When one side withdraws, the fire burns itself out. The silence is not avoidance, it is discipline. It says, I will not waste energy convincing you of what you refuse to see. I will not reduce my dignity to noise in order to compete for recognition. That restraint is not passive, it is powerful. The beauty of silence is that it creates room for accountability. As long as you are speaking, the other person can hide behind your noise. They can dismiss your words as exaggeration. They can tune out your explanations. They can avoid facing their own role in the dynamic. But when you withdraw, there's no distraction left. The silence reflects them back to themselves. It gives them space to wonder, to question, to notice the absence they once took for granted. Some will fill that silence with effort and awareness. Others will do nothing, and that too gives you clarity. Silence also protects your energy. Words take effort, and repeated explanations that go unheard drain your spirit. By choosing silence, you conserve strength. You redirect it inward instead of bleeding it out where it gains no return. You reclaim your power by refusing to beg for acknowledgement. And in that quiet, you find perspective. You see the relationship more clearly, stripped of the noise of constant trying. Silence is not about punishment, it is about presence. It is about communicating with restraint what words could never achieve. It shows that you are not desperate to be heard, that your worth does not depend on convincing anyone else. It creates an undeniable awareness that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. And in that space, the other person must decide, will they rise to fill the void, or will they reveal by their inaction that they never intended to? Either way, the silence gives you truth, and truth is always more powerful than noise. Reclaiming the frame is one of the most transformative shifts a person can make in any relationship or interaction. For too long, many people operate from a position of trying to be chosen. They invest time, energy, and emotion into winning approval, validation, or recognition from others. They hope their efforts, their words, or their presence will persuade someone to value them, to see their worth, to treat them well. The problem with this approach is that it cedes control. It places your sense of value in the hands of someone else, leaving your emotions, your confidence, and your dignity subject to their choices. Reclaiming the frame is about taking back that power by shifting the focus from being chosen to choosing yourself. When you operate from a mindset of being chosen, you constantly react. Every message they send, every gesture they make, every silence they leave behind can feel like a referendum on your worth. You are no longer acting from your own center. You are navigating their preferences, anxieties, and moods. Your energy is spent managing theirs, your attention is divided, and your confidence becomes fragile because it depends on external validation. This is a subtle but powerful form of surrender, and it creates an imbalance in every interaction. The more you try to be chosen, the less power you hold. Choosing yourself, on the other hand, flips the script entirely. When you prioritize your own standards, your own boundaries, and your own sense of self-worth, the dynamic changes. Suddenly, you are no longer negotiating for attention. You are offering it selectively. You are no longer desperate to be accepted. You are discerning about who earns your presence. This shift communicates, without a word, that your value is inherent, not negotiable. It forces others to meet you on your terms or reveal that they are unwilling or unable to do so. Either outcome benefits you because it aligns the relationship with truth rather than illusion. Reclaiming the frame requires clarity. You must know what you will and will not tolerate, what energy you are willing to invest, and where your boundaries lie. It means recognizing that your presence, attention, and commitment are valuable resources, not disposable commodities. When you choose yourself first, you begin to act from a position of authority over your own life. You decide where your time goes, whom you allow in your space, and how you are treated. This internal authority manifests externally in the way others respond, often shifting the dynamic without a single argument or confrontation. The power of reclaiming the frame also lies in its effect on perception. People are drawn to confidence, not neediness. They respond to clarity, not desperation. When you stop seeking approval and start choosing yourself, you create an aura of self-possession that is magnetic. It does not require manipulation or coercion. It requires consistency and alignment. The more you demonstrate that your value is independent of their recognition, the more they begin to perceive your presence as significant. Reclaiming the frame also allows for self-protection. When you stop ceding control to others, you are less likely to tolerate neglect, disrespect, or manipulation. You begin to recognize patterns that once went unnoticed, and you act in accordance with your own standards. This clarity prevents wasted energy and emotional depletion. It also cultivates relationships that are genuine rather than transactional interactions that are mutual rather than one-sided. Ultimately, reclaiming the frame is about empowerment. It is about remembering that your worth is not defined by anyone else's choices. It is about acting from a place of alignment rather than reaction. By choosing yourself first, you not only protect your dignity, but you also elevate the quality of every relationship and interaction in your life. The dynamic shifts not because you demand it, but because you embody it, and that embodiment is far more powerful than words or effort ever could be.